Hello and welcome to Computer Active TV, Hints and Tips. My name is Tim Smith and today we're going to take a look at replacing the battery in an iPod. Now we've got a third generation iPod here which is a few years old and the battery life isn't what it once was. So we've got a kit here from Maplin's which includes a replacement battery and the tools for changing it. Now a couple of pointers before we start. You'll need to make sure that you've got the right kit for the version of iPod that you own, and also opening the case will invalidate the warranty. In our case we're not too bothered because this is quite an old iPod, so it's not covered anyway. So let's get cracking and make a start. Now the first step is to remove the case of the iPod. Now as you can see there are no screws anywhere and all the catches are on the inside. This is the hardest part of the whole procedure. Now, there are a couple of tools supplied to do this with, and the instructions recommend that you start about 60mm from the top of the iPod, and that's about the position of these buttons here. Now, it should be possible to slip the tool between the plastic and the metal and then pop the catches that are underneath. Now, the instructions recommend using a thumbnail to just loosen the two up. We actually wound up using a screwdriver as well as being the only way to actually push them apart. Once you're started, it's much easier. As you can see here, here are the catches, and then the rest of the case simply opens out. Now, be very careful when you do this. There's a cable that links the two halves together, and that won't come apart, so you need to keep both sides of the case very close to each other to avoid breaking this cable. So we're going to set the iPod down on the table like this. Now that the iPod's open, we need to remove the hard disk in order to get access to the battery. Now the hard disk is surrounded by this blue plastic here, and there's also some on the underside, so lift both the hard drive and the bottom plastic up, and then you can see under here there's the connector, which is actually this bronzy bit here. So all you need to do is to just get your fingernail underneath it and lift up, and there it is. It's popped away. You can see the connector there, and put the hard disk on one side and we'll fit that back later on. Now that the hard disk has been removed, you can see the battery here, and this is the connector taking power from the battery to the iPod. You might want to note that the red cable is towards the centre of the iPod and the white cable is towards the outside. So carefully remove the power connector. It should just pop out like so, and you will also find that the cable goes underneath a little spur of the circuit board underneath the connector. Gently lift the battery out. You might encounter some resistance. Our battery was stuck down slightly, and then remove the cables from underneath the circuit board. There's the old battery. Put that on one side. We won't need that anymore. So here's the new battery nearly ready to fit. You can see that it's got a covering on it, so it's a bit thicker than the old battery, and also the cables are a bit thicker as well. Make sure they're tucked underneath that spur there so that they're out of the way. Push the battery down into place and then pop the connector in, and it should just click down, and you can hear it click, and there it is, it's all ready. Make sure that the cables are away from the catches and down as far as possible so they don't get caught on anything. Now that the battery's been replaced, all that remains is to put the iPod back together again. The first part of this is putting the hard disk back in. Now that it's out, you can see the connector on the hard disk and the connector on the iPod. Now it's quite fiddly and you can't see what you're doing, so the easiest way to do it is to do it at an angle with the leading edge of the hard disk connector going in first, and then you should be able to feel when it's in place and push it down to fit it in. If you've got it in the right place, it'll actually be in firmly and you won't find it popping out. And then gently lay the hard disk back down on top of the circuit board and the battery. It's also again worth checking that these cables here haven't got caught up underneath the hard disk. Now that the hard disk has been put back in place, the final stage is to put the iPod halves together again. Now there's a small catch here that you have to be aware of, which is the hold switch, the one that you push to make sure that you don't accidentally stop or start music. The switch itself is located here on the circuit board, but the switch that you push is on the other side of the iPod, on the metal bit, and you can just see the red bits here that catch over the little switch. So you need to try and align it to make sure that the black switch falls in between the two red halves here. The best way to do that is make sure that they're both switched in the same direction. So carefully bring the two halves together. Do all the catches on one side down first, and then bring it together like so, pressing all the way around to make sure that all the catches have taken, and you should be able to feel a positive switch when you move the hold switch. There it is, and you can see the iPod is working again. So there you are, one iPod with the battery replaced and hopefully better than it was when it was first bought. You can find the photo workshop that accompanies this video using the address that you can see below. This isn't an easy task to undertake, as you've seen, but the kit we got from Maplin's was only £18, which is a lot cheaper than buying a new 15GB media player. This has been Tim Smith for Computeractive TV.